Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dr. Andrew Kim M.D. I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and today's video is on the growing concern that the stimulant epidemic in America is growing. Bottom line, my opinion is the stimulant epidemic has been here. It has been rather silent, more so than the opioid epidemic that gets a lot of press in our media, but there is clear evidence. There is a growing problem, an ever increasing overutilization, overprescription, and misuse of stimulants traditionally used to treat ADHD or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The evidence is clear as day, in my opinion. So today we're going to go over some breaking news that's happened in the recent healthcare media and also just give you some of my commentary. So let's dive right into it. I'll put the link below, but you can go to the Justice Department's website, and I'm going to read to you the latest healthcare scandal that has happened. And I'm going to read off of this just so I can read it verbatim, not get myself in any kind of hot water. So go to the Justice Department's website, and the latest scandal, this has been one of many strings of healthcare scandals that have occurred with, yet again, another telehealth company that allegedly is just making it super simple to give Americans easy access to stimulant medications like Adderall, Vyvanse, Ritalin. So here we go. I'm going to read off of this. I'm going to look down here. So, quote from June 13th, 2024, reading this right off of the Justice Department's websites. Justice Department's first criminal drug distribution prosecutions related to a digital health company that distributed controlled substances via telemedicine. So not ethical allegations, but legal criminal charges. So this is related to Dunn Global Incorporated. It reads, quote, as alleged, these defendants exploited the COVID-19 pandemic to develop and carry out a $100 million scheme to defraud taxpayers and provide easy access to Adderall and other stimulants for no legitimate medical purpose, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. Quote, those seeking to profit from addiction by illegally distributing controlled substances over the internet should know that they cannot hide their crimes and that the Justice Department will hold them accountable. Quote, as alleged in the indictment, the defendants provided easy access to Adderall and other stimulants by exploiting telemedicine and spending millions on deceptive advertisements on social media. They generated over $100 million in revenue by arranging for the prescription of over 40 million pills. 40 million pills, said Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General Nicole Argentieri, head of the Justice Department's Criminal Division. So, you've seen other telehealth companies in similar hot waters in years past, but this is one of the first criminal drug prosecutions that is occurring in relation to one of these. And I'm sure if you Googled it, you can go find the other telehealth companies that I'm referring to. So bottom line, my opinion is that there has been and is an ongoing epidemic of stimulant medications. Number one, the statistics support there is a problem. We have plenty of global health data that shows that the United States, from a percentage standpoint, incidence standpoint, how are we contributing to the bulk of ADHD diagnoses in the world? Some might argue that we have better healthcare. I argue maybe we don't. Other countries have nationalized healthcare systems, better access to healthcare. So some of the data showed that between the US, 5 other major European nations like the UK, Spain, France, and Japan, of those 7, somehow the United States accounts for about 80% of the ADHD diagnoses. That is absurd to me. With the melting pot of America, right, we have Asians, Black, Caucasian, etc. We have so many different ethnicities that we're a melting pot. So we're not like Norway, right? We're not a homogenous society, so you can't even argue that there's something genetically unique about Americans. There's a problem with our society over-seeking a diagnosis of ADHD to account for their difficulties. We have a problem with how we diagnose ADHD. It's so crappy how we diagnose ADHD in America. I'm talking about me, myself, my colleagues, all right? I'm a part of this. The psychiatry field has a problem with how we diagnose ADHD. We don't even offer easy access to appropriate tools to best diagnose ADHD. There's money involved, like with this telehealth scandal that I'm referring to make money off of the demand for stimulants. So it's multifactorial. I don't think there's one simple explanation, but bottom line, there is a problem. Statistics show us there is an overdiagnosis of ADHD in America. There's no way that our rates of ADHD diagnoses should be this high. I get it. ADHD advocacy groups, I'm not bashing them. They're there for advocacy, to educate, promote awareness about ADHD, but sometimes they even get critical when someone like myself brings up these absurd stats. So to be clear, I'm not against lowering the bar to access, empowering people to seek out diagnoses, but if you tell me there is not a problem with overdiagnosing ADHD, then you have your head in the sand. I don't care what you say. Second piece of evidence, we have a stimulant shortage in America. Go ask patients of mine, patients of yours, you yourself, the listener, if you have genuine ADHD, how difficult has it been in the past couple years, especially this past year, these past few months, to get your legitimate prescription filled at your local pharmacy, at your Walgreens, your CVS, etc. There is a shortage happening. Literally, folks who genuinely need this can't even get their appropriate treatment because there is a damn shortage. Okay? What is contributing to this shortage? Everything I said. Overdiagnosis, our society over-seeking explanations and wanting to call their problems ADHD. These companies who are leveraging this demand and just doling out Vyvanse, Adderall, Ritalin like candy. Like candy. Passing it out. That's what's happening. So for anyone who thinks that this is not a problem, that this is not a growing epidemic for adults, teens, children, I'm sorry. You are in the dark. Okay? We as a country have to have a dialogue so that we don't have this escalate any further. And I think the problem is, right, with the opioid epidemic, there's deaths involved, right? There's imagery of people walking in the streets, shooting up heroin, abusing their Oxycontin, oxycodone, ending up in the hospital. So we don't have the palpable, tangible imagery. We don't have as many dire hospitalizations and medical consequences as immediate as we would see in like the opioid epidemic, but it's here. This problem is here in our society, in our country, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, in our households, okay? Now let me be crystal clear, okay? Because I know how this is going to be interpreted because I'm getting a little impassioned here, all right? I believe in the concept of ADHD. I'm not saying that ADHD does not exist. I diagnose it myself with my patients over the 12 years that I've been in practice, okay? Not saying that ADHD doesn't exist, not saying that those who have ADHD should not get the appropriate treatment with stimulants. I'm not trying to vilify stimulants, just like in my other videos. I'm trying to educate about some of the risks with like benzodiazepines, right? Pain meds, but I'm not trying to vilify them. Same thing with stimulants. For the appropriate patient, used responsibly, it could be a game changer. It could be life-changing. But I also believe, and this is the thing, in life, you don't have to be binary and black and white. I can believe in the concept of ADHD, and I could wholeheartedly believe that the appropriate folks who need stimulants should be able to get them without a hassle. But I can also say to myself, I think this is being overdiagnosed. I think that overdiagnosing problem is multifactorial. It's a societal expectation problem. It's a how, as a field, we stink at diagnosing this problem. That brings me to my next point. I think as a field of psychiatry, we suck at diagnosing ADHD. The field of psychiatry, psychology, I think we have to reconceptualize the criteria in the DSM of how we diagnose ADHD. And trust me, I'm going to get so many clinicians, other MDs, colleagues, NPs that are going to leave comments here saying, I'm an ADHD expert. You're just not an expert in ADHD. Bull crap. Bull crap. Okay? Yes. Some clinicians may be better than others, but let me read you the criteria, okay? So for those of you who've never gone to a psychiatrist's office or a psychologist's office to get diagnosed with ADHD, you're going to hear some fancy terminology. They're going to say, oh, I'm trained in doing a modified Connors assessment. I'm trained in doing a ASRS. And they're going to give you all these acronyms. Underneath all the fancy lingo, it's a handful of non-specific, non-unique questions. Non-specific, non-unique questions. I can rattle them off my head. I'm familiar with all of these assessments. Okay, so when people rattle these off saying, I do these assessments and screeners, and then I use my clinical knowledge and pattern recognition and my experience, and oh, I'm better than my other colleagues at diagnosing ADHD. Pfft, nonsense. Okay, let me read off some of the items from these so-called tools. We like making it sound fancy. Do you have trouble sustaining attention concentration? Do you tend to procrastinate a lot? Do you tend to misplace your personal belongings like your keys, your wallet, your phone? Do you have a hard time paying attention in conversations? Do you tend to talk over other people? Do you tend to blurt out and try to complete their sentence? Do you have trouble keeping your appointments? Yes, those are phenomena that can happen as a part of an ADHD syndrome. But here's the reality, okay, and I'm just being realistic. Those can also be explained away by anxiety, generalized anxiety, social anxiety, depression. All of these other phenomena have cognitive consequences as part of their syndromes as well. Meaning, again, those questions are not specific and unique to this phenomenon or diagnosis of ADHD. So one has to think comprehensively, right? Simply answering a questionnaire and saying, well, I hit a lot of the items on this screener is not sufficient. It really is not. But that is what we do. Maybe I'm making it oversimplified, but trust me, underneath fanciness and all this other terminology, this is what most clinicians in America are going to be doing for you in an office setting. Now, people might say, well, what about testing? You know, more formal testing rather than only relying on interview-based screeners and questionnaires. What about testing? Yeah, I believe, look, testing itself, it's called neuropsychiatric testing. Typically, neuropsychiatric testing is performed by a psychologist. Now, look, psychiatrists like myself may do it as well, but I'd say in America it's more commonplace. Most of the time, it is performed by a PhD or a PsyD psychologist. You typically go in for a comprehensive intake or interview for about an hour. They try to understand your concerns about what you suspect might be ADHD. And then based off that interview, they then kind of tailor a testing experience. It's a combination of surveys, questionnaires, but also actual standardized testing. They may be testing reading comprehension, impulsivity, visuospatial tasks, etc., trying to rule in and rule out. Is this a specific learning disorder, learning disability, or is this a more global ADHD? Now that second half, the testing, may take several hours, maybe on the short end 2 hours, on the longer side maybe even 4 or 5 hours, depending on level of thoroughness and what is being tested. And then they take your results and then they kind of compare you to similar adults in your adults or kids in your age range, similar educational background, and kind of see what the results show. Like, are you within kind of the typical standard deviation? Are you on the high end and doing quite well? Are you a couple standard deviations below? And then looking at the sum of all the results, does this indicate a possible ADHD diagnosis, yes or no? Okay, so even testing in itself is not foolproof. There's still a gray area, there's still room for interpretation, but I will say that oftentimes combined with clinical interviewing and clinical judgment, that is much better than simply going off questionnaire surveys and a clinical interview alone. Now here's the problem. We don't live in an ideal world. This testing often is only accessible in certain communities based off how many psychologists offer this. Does your insurance even cover it? Do you even have insurance? Do you even have good insurance? If you were to try to pay out of pocket for this, I would say on the low end, it could be as anywhere as low as $500, $600, $700. On the high end, several thousands of dollars. So when I say it like that, do you feel like the average working class American can be like, yeah, let me just shell out $500 to $1,000 to $1,500? Probably not. Sure, you got more urgent pressing needs to pay for your mortgage, for your rent, for food, for transportation, for gas, groceries. versus saying, I'm going to shell out $1,500 damn dollars for testing for something that's not even still foolproof, right? So we have an access to diagnostic tools problem. We have the simpler diagnostic methodology, interviewing, surveys, questionnaires, observation, is very flawed kind of problem. We have a societal expectation. I'm just looking for an explanation. And I don't bash people. I'm just saying people are trying to attribute their concerns and they want an explanation. Sometimes it truly is ADHD, but oftentimes it is not. Yet as a field in healthcare, we're not doing our society justice by just saying, hey, said yes to enough things on an interview, yes to enough things on a questionnaire, and let's just call it ADHD now. Let's put you on heavy-duty stimulants, right? And I think as a society, we also have to understand that stimulants have risks. Stimulants do have risks. They have risks of short-term side effects like insomnia, feeling a little edgier, more anxious, heart can race faster, appetite suppression, weight loss. In the long-term, intermediate term, there's cardiac risks that we often downplay and don't like talking about. Okay, I don't think our society, healthcare, wants to overly freak out parents who are giving this out to their children. And again, I'm not trying to vilify stimulants. I'm just saying we have to have a balanced discussion. Where do we set the threshold when we should utilize these? Okay, where do we set the threshold to not over-pathologize inattention, right? It's interesting because, I work with a college population, and I think there's this narrative, and a lot of social media pushes this narrative that, as long as you subjectively sense that you're having problem with inattention, then you probably have ADHD. Even if a clinician tells you that you don't meet criteria, don't believe them. You probably have ADHD. And I think they've taken a concept of neurodivergence or neurodiversity to the extreme, saying that you can call whatever you want, okay? Here's the reality. No human was ever designed to be 100% attentive. I actually find it pathological, or would say someone's a liar if they say, during a 1-hour lecture, I never got distracted once. I was able to pay attention the entire time. I guarantee you, if you even made it this far in this video, you've probably zoned out and said this random doctor who's babbling. You probably thought about 18 other things in the span of these minutes that you've been watching this video. Meaning, I expect that to happen. No human can sustain 100% hyperfocus for a prolonged period of time. So again, where are we setting this subjective threshold of what we're calling the normal human experience versus pathological to the point where it requires medication, okay? And again, I'm not trying to say that ADHD doesn't exist. I'm just saying as a field, we need to have serious conversations and rethink how we conceptualize ADHD. My personal opinion is I think we're setting the bar and the diagnostic methodology way too low. Overly sensitive, over-diagnosing is part of the problem. And I think it does a disservice to the folks who truly have this phenomenon, the classic conceptualization and paradigm of what we call ADHD. I don't think it does them a service because now that diagnosis itself is almost losing meaning to some degree. We're actually hindering access to their treatments because of the overdiagnosing, because of enabling misutilization of stimulants. There is literally shortages that continue to happen on and off in these past few years, limiting access to the folks who truly need their treatments, okay? So again, I'm just trying to have a balanced conversation, but also point out concern. I'm not trying to fearmonger, but again, this is a warning that we have a growing big problem in the United States. It is called a stimulant, and I'm going to use it not for melodrama, not for clicks. We have clear evidence there is a growing epidemic of stimulant misuse in America, and we need a wake-up call.